Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. Currently, we are in Deuteronomy chapter 19. I'm going to read through these chapters. Again, we have read through them before, and these are, again, just instructions and commands for Israel as they prepare to enter the promised land. Also, keep this in mind, as Moses said in our previous study, that the king were to keep a copy of this law, and probably he's referring to this book of Deuteronomy, to read from it. This is sort of the short version, the again, short version of the entire law. It gives enough information to capture the entire law and how they were to obey it. Now Leviticus, of course, go into a lot more detail if you go back and you want to read that, if you so desire. All right, chapter 19, and verse 1 says, "When the Lord your God annihilates the nations whose land he has given you, so that you drive them out and live in their cities and houses, you are to set apart 3 cities for yourself within the land the Lord your God has given you to possess. You are to determine the distance and divide the land the Lord your God is granting you as an inheritance into 3 regions, so that anyone who commits manslaughter can flee to these cities." Now again, these were cities of refuge. "Here is the law concerning the case someone who kills a person and flees there to save his life, having killed his neighbor accidentally without previously hating him." So that's one of the keys right there. It couldn't be murder. "If he goes into the forest with his neighbors to cut timber, and his hand swings an axe to chop down a tree, but the blade flies off and the handle and strikes the neighbor so that he dies, that person may flee to one of the cities to live. Otherwise, the avenger of blood, in the heat of his anger, might pursue the one who commits manslaughter to overtake him, because the distance is great, and strike him dead. Yet he did not deserve to die, since he did not previously hate his neighbor." Now, what is interesting is notice the difference between murder, manslaughter. In other words, he didn't mean it, but it nevertheless happened, and it resulted in the death of someone. Okay, verse 7. "This is why I am commanding you to set apart 3 cities for yourself." So these cities were safe, and even if you were enraged with vengeance, and that happens, right? Then I could tell you. I'm thinking about a story of vengeance, where that the notorious gangster John Gotti, one of his neighbors had killed one of his sons, and his wife demanded justice from Gotti, and as the story goes, she got it. Well, God is saying, hey, you know what? Throw some cities up here, cities of refuge, so that wouldn't happen. Verse 8. "If the Lord your God enlarges your territory as he swore to your fathers, and gives you all the land he promised to give them, provided you keep every one of these commands I'm giving you today to follow them, loving the Lord your God and walking in his ways at all times, you are to add 3 more cities to these. In this way, innocent blood will not be shed, and you will not become guilty of bloodshed in the land the Lord your God has given you as an inheritance. But if someone hates his neighbor, lies in ambush for him, attacks him, and strikes him fatally, and flees to these cities, the elders of that city must send him back, take him from there, and hand him over to the avenger of blood, and he will die. You must not look on him with pity, but purge from Israel the guilt of shedding innocent blood, and you will prosper. You must not remove your neighbor's boundary markers established at the start of the inheritance you will receive in the land your God has given you. This had to do with the territories, okay? In other words, don't annex land illegally. Verse 15, one witness cannot establish any wrongdoing or sin against a person, whatever that person has done. The fact must be established by the testimony of two or three witnesses. Now, this is to be true. You cannot. One person just cannot. Actually, even if they are right, you cannot establish, especially a death penalty case, just on the fact of a mere one witness. Verse 16. If a malicious witness testifies against someone and accuses him of a crime, the two people in dispute must stand in the presence of the Lord before the priest and the judge in authority at that time. The judge ought to make a careful investigation, and if the witness turns out to be a liar who has falsely accused his brother, he must do to him as he intended to do to his brother. You must purge evil from you. Then everyone else will hear and be afraid, and they will never again do anything evil like this among you. You must not show pity. Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Now this comes on remember, if there is a false testimony. Now think about that today, how many false testimonies are given today, and how people are punished. Think about how people today, we say this today, how people are in prison today because our laws are so weak and biased. Okay, how many people? And again, I'm not just talking about black, but there's all kinds of people who have been in jail for years on the false testimony of people. Verse 20. When you go out to war, this is chapter 20, verse 1. When you go out to war against your enemies and see horses, chariots, and an army larger than yours, do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, is with you. When you are about to engage in battle, the priest is to come forward to address the army. He is to say to him, listen, Israel, today you are about to engage in battle with your enemies. Do not be cowardly, do not be afraid, alarmed or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight against you, to fight for you against your enemies, and to give you victory. Now, and they have testimony. Remember, they have Egypt, they have the king of Og, Siog, whatever, all those kings that they already destroyed. Verse 5, the officers are to address the army. Has anyone built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him leave and return home, otherwise he may die in battle, and another man dedicated it. Has any man planted a vineyard and not begun to enjoy its fruit? Let him leave and return home, otherwise he may die in battle, and another man enjoys its fruit. Has any man become engaged to a woman and not married her? Let him leave and return home, otherwise he may die in battle, another man marry her. The officers would continue to address the army and say, is there any man who is afraid or cowardly? Let him leave and return home, so that his brother's heart will not melt like his own. When the officers finish addressing the army, they will appoint military commanders to lead it. So anyone that's afraid, he says, to go home. They also have, remember, they have an example of people who have done just that. They just spent 40 years in the wilderness because the first generation who came back from spying out the land told them, we can't win this battle. Verse 10. When you approach a city to fight against it, you must make an offer of peace. If it accepts your offer of peace and opens its gates to you, all the people found in it will become forced laborers for you and serve you. However, if it does not make peace with you, but wages war against you, lay siege to it. When the Lord your God hands it over to you, you must strike down all of its males with the sword. You may take the women, children, animals, and whatever else is in the city as spoils, as plunders. You may enjoy the spoils of the enemy that the Lord your God has given you. This is how you are to treat all the cities that are far away from you, and are not among the cities of these nations. However, you must not let any living thing survive among the cities of these people the Lord God has given you as an inheritance. You must completely destroy them. Now, these are the ones he is referring to. because these were the most evil and it was just evil beyond our imagination, just unbelievable. However, the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that they won't teach you to do these detestable things they do for their gods, and you sinned against the Lord your God. So we talked about some of their detestable things. When you lay siege to a city for a long time, fighting against it in order to capture it, you must not destroy its trees by putting an axe to them, because you can get food from them. You must not cut them down. Are trees of the field human to come under siege by you? But you may destroy the trees that you know that do not produce fruit. You may cut them down and build siege works against the city that is waging war against you until it falls. All right, let's go to chapter 21. This is chapter 21, verse 1, guys. If a murder victim is found lying in a field in the land the Lord your God has given you to possess it, and it is not known who killed him, your elders and judges must come out and measure the distance from the victim in the nearby cities. The elders of the city nearest to the victim are to get a young cow that has not been yoked or used for work. The elders of the city will bring the cow down to a continually flowing stream to be placed not tilled or sown, and they will break its neck there by the stream. Then the priests, the sons of Levites, will come forward, for Yahweh your God has chosen them to serve him and pronounce blessings in his name, and they are to give a ruling in every dispute in the case of the assault. All the elders of the city nearest the victim will wash their hands by the stream over the young cow whose neck has been broken. They will declare, our hands did not shed this blood, our eyes did not see it. Lord, forgive your people Israel, you redeem, and do not hold the shedding of innocent blood against them. Then they will be absolved of the responsibility for bloodshed. You must purge from yourselves the guilt of shedding innocent blood, for you will be doing what is right in the Lord's sight. So again, we see some of these laws that Israel will put under. I'll say this. Remember, the law, one, was righteous. The law was for unrighteous people. And thank God for the grace of Jesus. Let me move on. Verse 10. When you go to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God hands them over to you, and you take some of them prisoners, and if you see a beautiful woman among the captive, desire her and want to take her as your wife, you are to bring her into your house. She must shave her head, trim her nails, remove the clothes she was wearing when she was taken prisoners, live in your house and mourn for her father and mother for a month. After that, you may have sexual relations with her and be her husband, and she should be your wife. Then, if you are not satisfied with her, you ought to let her go where she wants, but you must not sell her for money or treat her as merchandise, because you have humiliated her. Now, again, we don't go by these kind of statutes under the New Testament. And again, as I said way in the beginning, some of these, when it comes to slaves and prisoners and women, how they're treated, all I can say is I can't give you an answer. We don't agree with it. It certainly doesn't meet the New Testament standard, but as you can see right here, some of this is kind of hard to take because it's just wrong in that respect. But nevertheless, this is what God had to command. All right. Verse 15. If a man have two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and both the love and the unloved bear him sons, and if the unloved wife has the firstborn sons, when that man give what he has to his sons as inheritance, he is not to show favoritism to the son of the loved wife as the firstborn over the firstborn of the unloved wife. He must acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the unloved wife, by giving him 2 shares of his estates, for he is the firstborn of his virility he has the rights of the firstborn. One can't but help but think of Leah and Rachel, you know. But again, the fact that, notice, he can have two wives, the number of wives were not restricted, and that's kind of interesting. But again, I'm rushing through this. I'm not going to debate the right and wrong of it. If you want to say this is what the command that God has given, and that's, hey, life was life. Okay, verse 18. If a man has a stubborn or rebellious son who does not obey his father or mother and doesn't listen to them even after they discipline him, his father and mother must take hold of him and bring him to the elder of the city and to the gate of his hometown. They would say to the elder of the city, "This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He doesn't obey us. He's a glutton and a drunkard." Then all of the men of the city will stone him to death. You must purge evil from you, and all of Israel here be afraid. One thing to note about this is that when he says a son, this son is kind of up in age here. So we're talking about a teenager up, and not talking about just 7 or 8-year-old. But notice he said he's a glutton and a drunkard. So that's, again, so he's up in age. So just keep that in mind. Verse 21. If anyone is found guilty of an offense deserving the death penalty and is executed, and you hang his body on the tree, you are not to leave his corpse on the tree overnight, but to bury him that day. For anyone hung on the tree is under God's curse. You must not defile the land the Lord your God has given you as an inheritance. A couple of things come to mind here. One, Paul quotes this, that anyone who was hung on a tree is cursed. He was talking about Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. If you remember, when Jesus was crucified, that he was hung on the cross, he was taken down that night and buried. Jesus died the death of a criminal. So understand, when we talk about certain laws today and how they were applied, Jesus died the death of a criminal. That's why they were quick to take his body down and bury him. Now, as far as the capital punishment and this big debate today, I am for the death penalty, and at the same time I am against the death penalty. I am for the death penalty because there are some evil people that need to leave the earth. In other words, if you just kind of think about all the people that just are calling just evil in our society, if they wasn't here, society would be better. Now, the bad thing is there's always going to be evil people. But for that reason, this is why you have the death penalty. Now, the other thing is that because of evil people, those who are adjudicating the death penalty themselves are evil. And to me, the risk of innocent people dying, and millions of innocent people have died over human history. That's why I say, on the one hand, I am for the death penalty. On the other hand, I'm against the death penalty. To me, a person should be absolutely, the law, the cases should be absolutely beyond a shadow of doubt proven before the death penalty is executed. You have evil prosecutors that even after a person is proclaimed innocent, they still want to execute them. That shows you how evil they are. Anyway, chapter 22 in our next study. Guys, I will see you then. All right.